Parmeshvaraya. Parabrahman, Parashakti. Namah Shivaya. Om Shivoham. 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 Aham. Aham. Om Tat Sat. Namaste. As we begin this sacred gathering, this gathering of the powers of Sat, the supreme power of being, the power of creation, sustenance, destruction, transformation, awakening, revelation, liberation. May we all be aligned with that supreme power, whether we come from a tradition in which we invoke that power under the name of Jehovah or Christ or Allah or Brahman or Shiva or Vishnu or Krishna, Rama, Buddha, or we invoke the Tao, we invoke the supreme consciousness, the unified field that contains the cosmos in its infinite intelligence and light, and ordains the evolution of the events that occur within the phenomenal plane. We invoke that supreme power of light, of goodness, of truth, of unconditional love and compassion, of supreme beauty, supreme nobility, valor, courage. And that power of knowledge, the knowledge of our true nature, as manifestations of the one supreme Lord, the one supreme ruling intelligence who underlies and pervades this universe. We invoke you to be present within the hearts of all of us, within the consciousness, and for our individual consciousness to be able to be united with the Supreme One. United in will, united in mind, united in heart, united as the one supernal flame of eternal light and life. There are many other names that have been given to the Supreme One, to the Great Spirit. Far too many to list all in one gathering. But God, the Mother, Father, Friend, Commander, Beloved, and Supreme Self. We invoke, we surrender, we allow the consciousness that seems separate to be reabsorbed into that supreme ocean of perfect consciousness, perfect goodness, perfect peace, perfect love, so that we may embody all of those qualities here in this moment, this hour, in which the power of God is so necessary to save the human spirit that is now in its most dire moment of testing. And so it is at this moment, as we witness in real time the collapse of the global socio-political order, that by remaining true to God, remaining true to the real self, to the eternal nature that is transcendent of the transitory states of life or death, and whose intelligence is able to guide us in this dimension and in every dimension unto eternity. It is at this moment that we must return to the truth of our being. We must shed the obsolete level of consciousness known as the ego. The age of the ego is over. It has proven insufficient to sustain human life in an orderly way in which all can prosper and thrive in such a way that we are able to enjoy the blessings of life within the world and the flowering of our transcendent being. And to live in the world as beings liberated from the illusion, awakened in this dream. And able to act in this dream as instruments of that supreme intelligence through receiving and accepting the grace that is being offered to all. But to receive the grace, we must be able to absorb it. And that means we must remove the barrier of the ego mind, the barrier, the interference patterns of the chattering mind that produces negative thoughts, emotions, and feelings that tend to block the grace of God from filling us. And so the urgent need of this hour is the voluntary dying to the ego and being reborn in the Holy Spirit, the pure spirit of the one Supreme Self. We are at the moment when the destiny of our species, our planet, of nature, that power which we were meant to steward and care for and revere, because of our mistreatment of Mother Nature, our mistreatment of one another, and our abandonment of God consciousness, we now face the whirlwind of events that must naturally ensue upon that failure of our consciousness to live up to its responsibilities. The responsibility to live in the image of God, in the nobility of spirit, in peace and harmony with one another. And so now is the moment when it is essential, no longer a luxury, no longer something that can be put off to the future, because otherwise there will be no future. We must now return to God consciousness in the fullness of God consciousness, not simply in a belief system or worship, but we must become worthy of that supreme spirit. We must resonate. We must become attuned. And attunement requires atonement. The letting go of all that is not godly within our hearts and minds, so that indeed the tone that resonates and is emitted by our instrument into this world is the beautiful tone of God's love, unconditional love, empowerment, and appreciation for the presence of God within everyone, within every being. And this power, when it is emitted in resonance by a sufficient number of beings who are in the same tone, who are attuned accurately to God consciousness, this will awaken all of the slumbering powers of nature. This will awaken and activate powers that have atrophied within us. And it will call to us the aid of the orders of the angels and archangels, and the guardian angels, the warrior angels, the healing angels, and all the beings of light and of goodness in this cosmos to come to the aid of fellow beings of light, of goodness, of godliness, who must now cross an abyss. An abyss that exists within the illusion of a world that has seemed to be separate from God. And by being willing to take flight beyond normal ego consciousness into our transcendent nature, we can easily fly across that chasm to the other side, the other shore, known as non-duality, known as unity, known as the revelation of God. And so for some, this is a time of dread, of tribulation, of destruction, of devastation. And for others, it is a time of wonder, a time of grace, of sublime beauty, of rapture, of liberation. And each of us has the sovereign power to decide the meaning of this time for you. And how you shall relate to the powers that are now actively morphing the world from one order into chaos until a new order forms. And it is we, all of us together, who will decide what kind of new order that we want. Whether it is a police state and a dystopia, or we want a divine order. If we want God's order to prevail, God's order shall prevail, there is no doubt of it. But there is a question that each of us must decide, and that is where we stand in relation to the powers of fear that operate on the phenomenal plane and the power of supreme goodness and love that functions in our heart if we allow ourselves to be free of the illusory ego identity. So it is a moment of supreme decision when we determine our own destiny. The final judgment is our own self-judgment, our own self-liberation, or our own self-enslavement to fear, to the illusion of lack, of separation from God, of abandonment, of hopelessness, of dismay. We can give in to those negative delusions, or we can surrender to the power of goodness and love that surmounts all difficulties and fears nothing. If our hearts are in union with God, there will be no fear of a virus or of any other kind of cataclysmic event that may occur within the phenomenal plane. And the power of that supreme intelligence will guide us, both to understand everything that is happening as a great blessing and a great liberation, but also to be of the ability to assist, to uplift others who may have fallen into negative states. But if we are to help anyone in this time, we must be beyond the need for help ourselves. And to be beyond the need of help, we must be in union with the one who is the source of all help. And nothing less will be sufficient to cross this abyss that all of us face together. As it is said in all traditions, as above, so below, as without, so within. And so today much of the world is under lockdown, under house arrest. Those who leave their house without proper papers and reasons can be arrested. In the same way, it is incumbent upon us all who are spiritual beings to arrest the ego that has left the house of God. We are all deputized, authorized to make that arrest, to take it out of its misery, out of its sickness, out of the virus of fear and lack and lust that the ego has fallen into. And we must return to that level of consciousness that is immune to all sickness, to all doubt, to all fear, to all lack, to all illusion and ignorance. And claim the empowerment that is our birthright as children of God and manifestations thereof, and share unconditionally with all the strength that comes of this union, this yoga with the supreme power of being. By sharing this power through love and compassion and recognition of each one's participation in the one self, in the one supreme infinite intelligence, we help to free the spirit from the cage of the ego mind. So that the spirit may once again be illumined, empowered, and able to co-dream the future that we are now laying before ourselves, before one another, through the level of consciousness that we choose to abide in. That future is one of beauty, one of heavenly delight, one of perfection. And we have the power, the miraculous power given to us to ignite the world with this vibrational frequency of God consciousness and inspiring all beings to share in the kingdom of heaven that we can dream together as we are meant to do. But that we can do only once we leave the hell realm of the illusory ego mind that identifies with the body that is mortal, and with the dualistic mind that is trapped between fear and desire. and cannot find the 0 point of the Supreme Real. And so, as always, the way out is into the 0 point, into the core of the heart, into the stillness and the peace beyond the false understandings of the chattering ego, limited intelligence. In the 0 point that is also the infinity of that creative imagination that brought the world into being and that is now morphing the world into a new form that will reflect the emanations of our own being projected into that world. And so we must have the spiritual hygiene of projecting only love, not fear, and acting with intelligence and with goodness and with dharma, following the law of God and acting non-violently in thought as well as deed, and without greed or theft or treating any other in a way that you would not want to be treated. If we do not return to that golden rule, then no other gold standard will avail us. And we must apply it at the most minute, micro levels of consciousness in every moment of our lives with every being. And in this restoration of the sense of family among our human species, of unity rather than enmity, all of the problems that seem to disturb us now will dissolve, and peace will return at a much higher level, and in order that will reflect the true significance of loyalty to God and to that presence within that is capable of authentic leadership and authentic cooperation, that is free of opinionated, judgmental mental activity, and that is able to download the inspirations of the Supreme Mind that can then be coherently shared with all. It is this ultimate meeting of the minds of all beings who are seekers of truth, who will find our consciousnesses converging at that central point of truth, of beauty, and of supreme power. And we will feel that oneness from which our existence derives as manifesting within the multiplicity, just as it does in the noumenal realm of absolute unity. And so this is the moment when out of many shall come one. And when the healing of the world, of all of its karmic load of sins and vices and ignorance can be settled, and again we can go into the karmic profit that comes of serving God fully. And return and earn the return of our Mother Nature's love and blessing, that the world may be reborn with the fullness of the web of life, of nature, of all of the forms of being, able to once again find a safe haven and habitat on our sacred planet, that we would no longer ever again ravage for profit, but revere with all of the sacredness that nature, in all of her glory, because she gives us life and she gives us joy and all of the goodness that we are able to experience in this world. Our reverence for the Great Mother must once again fill our hearts. And our loyalty to the law of the Father and to living in integrity in accord with that law. That is the recipe for our redemption, as has been taught by all spiritual traditions. There is nothing new that is being said today. We are returning to the teachings that have always been true, and that eternally remain true, but that now must return to us in new forms, a new dispensation, a new unity, a new wholeness that we had lost, in which we can all again speak the same language of truth that is universal for all, and not be separated by the illusion of different concepts of reality, but recognize that the real transcends all concepts and all limitations of the ego mind. When we attain that stillness and that liberation from ignorance, then the world will flower once again. And it can happen now. It's not a function of time, it's a function of our own willingness to become the avatars of that supreme love, that supreme truth, and that supreme will to goodness. May we all invoke and manifest as the highest version of our being that we can imagine, and share the fruits of that realization with all. And in that transformation, the miraculous will be fully revealed. Namaste. So the floor is open to the Sangha of our yogis who are the stalwart pillars of this ashram, as well as to our extended spiritual family around the world who are with us on the internet And we are happy to share this energy field with all. And because time and space are illusions, those who are listening from seemingly far away, if you are attuned to the words and the meanings and the power that is offering them from the transcendent that is within all of us, you will share the frequency of the blissful self. You will know the meaning of Sat Chit Ananda. You will feel the power of love coursing through you, the power of prana, keeping the body's immune system healed and well, and all of the bodies. We will feel a complete 7-body healing taking place. Because, as all yogis know, the physical body is only the grossest of the nested levels, in which we have a pranic body of bioelectromagnetic energy that protects us from negative energy. And when we have purified the mental body and the emotional, then we will receive the thoughts that are inspired by the wisdom body, by the archetypal self that receives the divine light from the Anandamaya Kosha, the blissful self. And we will connect the Sutratma, the self that we are in this life, with all of the lives that we have had and all of the powers and virtues that we may have forgotten that can now return to us, and from the future as well as the past. And the Mahasutratma, the great web of nature, the body of nature that is the body of the self, of God. That whole body is the body that each of us is a cell within, and we are the whole. And as we invoke the presence of the supreme power into this plane of Maya, of Lila, then God's play reveals itself in its supreme form. And it is this manifestation of the formless, the nameless, the indescribable, that now will bring the astonishment of its glory and its sublime majesty into the consciousness of every being. So, please, the floor is now open.
Thank you so much, Shunya. We have a lot of people with us today, and people from all over, people from the Philippines, Holland, a lot of people from Holland, Denmark, Canada, Israel, Costa Rica, the United States, Mexico, Romania, India, France, Finland, Switzerland, Belgium, the UK, Ethiopia, Spain, Germany, South Africa, Ireland, Portugal, Australia, Sweden, Brazil, and Italy.
Welcome to all. Blessings.
Our first question, it comes from our member section. It comes from Liz. She asks if you can talk about the concept of the unified field and how we can cultivate it in our local communities, particularly when there's so much divisiveness, mistrust, and resistance to unification. And asks, what is the role of personal sovereignty in the creation and maintenance of a unified community?
This is a very deep question you ask, Liz. And we must take first things first. The unified field is created by the Supreme One. And when we are in union with that supreme level of consciousness, then the field emanates palpably in the local space that the consciousness is projected into, and it emanates out in accord with the strength of one's absolute purification, so that there is no obstacle to the complete flow of that supreme healing energy. And that creates a field that is so strong that others will be magnetically drawn to its healing power, to its love, to its sense of serenity and safety that it offers. And the field will then morphogenetically grow in power as others begin to resonate at that level of consciousness, because it serves them as well as it serves the whole. And once they are in that state, they realize that each of us is a holon, is in fact a microcosmic manifestation of the whole. And as we let go of the illusion of a boundary that separates us from the whole, then that field becomes stronger and stronger. And so it will spread, and it will spread throughout the planet. And each of you who are participating in this satsang will create a local space in which the power of that supreme field will unify the consciousnesses that seem to be in conflict within it. But there must be patience, there must be surrender. It is not a case of personal sovereignty, but of transpersonal sovereignty. The ego must surrender to the one self who is sovereign. And it is that self then who activates and who changes the nature of the energy that spreads out into space and time from the center of the heart of the one who is fully surrendered to God. So have no desire of your own. Let God's will be done, but be completely surrendered to that will. And then you will know, you will feel palpably the energy, the love, the bliss, the miraculous unfoldments of events that could not have been manipulated or precognitively thought of, but will happen because of that infinite intelligence acting in your behalf, on your behalf, because you are serving that Supreme One. And so it is in that surrendered unity and empowerment that the sovereignty of God then becomes embodied and functions through the individual vessel. But do not attempt to allow an ego mind level of consciousness to attempt to appropriate that sovereignty that belongs only to God. But in the absorption into God consciousness, that sovereignty will manifest of its own. But it's the volition of God that now must prevail, not that of any individual.
Thank you, Shuna. One of the things that is kind of collapsing, besides health, is the financial system. And not only we, I think many people knew it was a system that didn't serve nature, didn't serve most humanity either. Yet the system is trying to save itself somehow, but I don't think it'll do it. Many years ago, you thought about types of wealth, different types of wealth. And I remember it was very uplifting to change the perspective of what is true value. I remember the first wealth was wisdom and understanding, which can help you deal with all of this, but it was food, skills. There were many others that maybe you can remind us, because now that the currency might not be as valuable, or it's obviously not, it's nice to remember those.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Durga. All the forms of wealth that we enjoy or desire to enjoy or fear losing on the phenomenal plane are derivative of the one supreme wealth, which is the wealth of God's presence here and now in real time. That's the only wealth that is of ultimate value, because that wealth will confer every other kind of wealth. which includes living in a world at peace, a world that is beautiful, a world in which all cooperate, a world in which the miraculous nature of God is fully manifest, a world of complete joy and health and of goodness. All of these forms of wealth can only come to us when we deserve them, and we must earn them through our own abandonment, renunciation, annihilation of greed, of lust, of attachment, of ego arrogance, and of the negative powers of the ego that come in the form of anger and hatred. When we have let go of all of those forms of impoverishment, then all of the forms of wealth that are in God's provenance to provide or not will be given. But we must earn the mercy of God by performing our responsibilities of cleansing the world of a kind of consciousness that has become destructive, perverted, corrupt, and lethal to the health of our planet. And if and when we do that, then we will see that all of the other forms of wealth will return.
I wanted to ask how to make use of the energy which we are showered right now, the Shakti which is coming in, and not instead project something into the body.
Not project into the body?
Not project some symptoms into the body.
Ah. Well, as you say, you're receiving the Shakti, yes? If you surrender to the source of that Shakti, your body will be protected. You must have that total faith, that realization. It's more than belief, that realization that the presence of God is with you. And you are protected. You are safe so long as you remain within that protective beam of God's light. And then no symptoms will come. Symptoms come because of a weakening of the immune system due to past negative karma and due to negative thoughts, weak thoughts, and thoughts that are not in alignment with the will of God. If those are renounced completely and the soul is purified, then there will be no symptoms. And whatever seems to be happening will be realized as perfection, as a blessing. And there will be no fear and no disturbance of one's blissful nature.
Thank you.
Purusha.
Thank you, Shunya. We have another question from one of our members, Maria from Miami. She says, do you think this global event is beneficial for resetting people's programming? It feels like someone pulled the emergency brake on the way many people live their lives. I see and hear so many stories of people enjoying the most basic things these days. Is there any chance that this effect can have any lasting power after things return to quote-unquote normal?
Don't expect things to turn back to normal ever again in this cycle of time. That normal is now gone. It's now our turn to create a new normal. But the question is, which norm do we want to live in accord with? And I hope everyone chooses to live in accord with the norms of God's law and love, and make it normal to be an avatar of God's power and goodness and grace. And when we do that, then a new world order that is in alignment with that level of consciousness will naturally ensue. And so this is not a temporary glitch in the system. I would say it's an emergency brake, and things are breaking, and it's an emergency, but it's also the emergence, again, of God consciousness that is being brought about. So whatever seem to be the causes, and there are many theories as to the cause of this kind of event, but the fact is it was karmically fated, it had to happen. And it had to happen in this way, just as the scriptures say that God comes as a thief in the night, unexpected. And I think very few people expected that this global civilization, with all its might and all of its technology and all of its weaponry and all of its media control and everything else, that this entire global order could in a few days be completely dismantled, and that Humpty Dumpty would never be able to be put together again. So it is a shock to many who still are in denial of the full implications of what's happening. But those implications are vast and unprecedented within historic memory. And if we are able to rise to the occasion, we will indeed see that this is the greatest blessing that has ever been offered to us for liberation of our world from oppression and from ignorance and from the separation that was caused by falling into too low a state of consciousness. And so this is forcing us to rise and become worthy of who we truly are once again. And if we do accept the responsibilities and the opportunities offered by this crisis, we will see that it is the portal to a new world of the greatest beauty ever imaginable. Rolando.
Thank you, Shunya. And first, I want to thank you for the inspired and an inspiring message that you just teaching that you just gave us and gave the world. I really hope it finds fertile soils and it reaches a lot of people in moments where love and light are much needed. And my question goes like this. There are many souls out there that don't know about ego, that don't know about spirituality, and I would say many souls. And I'm very sure that a lot of them will seek some kind of advice or light so they can walk towards it. And what would be your advice or your suggestion on how these people can start walking the walk and join us in this, become brothers in arms in this fight, well, not fight, but in this walk, in this path towards redemption and illumination.
Thank you for that question, and more even for the blessings that you have offered, Rolando, and I appreciate your taking up the power of the spiritual warrior in your own life. So what I want to emphasize for everyone is there is no monopoly on truth. And there are many ways to return to God. And one must ultimately go beyond all texts and methods and external means of attempting to find the self and turn within and learn to silence the mind and re-enter into the heart. And it's in that stillness that the presence of God, and the voice of God will be revealed to you, and the light of God and the power of God. And you will be guided toward a path to which your soul is magnetically drawn like a compass toward true north. Once you are in the stillness of your heart, you will be accurately guided, and you will find the teachings that you need. It may be that you find them on our website and on the online courses that we are going to be offering, and in all of the other ways in which we attempt to share what we have learned from all of the great sages and traditions, and from the grace of God directly. But it is also true that you may be guided to other sources of truth, other beings who resonate at that level, other traditions, and it is quite possible that you will find within your own local space, if not the ability to join a group that is in resonance, then to create one and to study together the great teachings of the various sages of different traditions. We're going to put on our website different books that have passed the test of time, whether they are Taoist or Buddhist or Vedic or Christian or Jewish or Muslim. There are great, great sages in all of the world's traditions whose understanding of truth converges once you get beyond the signifiers into what is signified by the words. They are all giving the same teachings. So there is not really a conflict between the different paths. There is really only one path if we understand accurately the meaning of the great teachings of all of those traditions. But we want to go beyond words. To find God, we need to be in silent surrender in the heart. And only that will bring us to the level of consciousness that is transconceptual. And it's in that level in which we find unity, and we find the ability to reorganize our collective consciousness globally and cosmically with that supreme order that does rule throughout all worlds. And we will then again be able to participate fully as cosmopolitan citizens of this divine world created by the one supreme being. So it will happen that you'll be guided naturally, but it is also the case that for those who are seeking sources of truth to read and to study, that we will be offering them, are already offering them, and that is one of the functions of this ashram and this sangha. And we are working very hard to expand our teachings, not only in terms of how much and how many we are able to get online, but in different languages, and able to disseminate them in ways that can be understood by everyone, regardless of the frame of reference in which you may begin this journey. Because there are atheists, and there are materialists, and there are beings who have many different theoretical constructs in which they start, that if you were to give them teachings that did not mesh with their current worldview, they would not be able to know if this makes sense or not, because it is discordant with and so different from what they have been taught, as you said, Rolando, that it becomes then a great confusion. And we want to avoid confusion, and so to stay accurate with the truth, you must consult your heart. And whatever brings your heart peace, you will know is leading you to the ultimate truth. Whatever creates disturbance or separation or a sense of duality and demonization of the other is going to lead into error, because God is one, and that oneness is a oneness that is shared by all, because all are children and manifestations of God. So that principle alone will help everyone to quickly get to that level of understanding that will enable us to share wordlessly the silence of grace and of love without having to convince someone of a truth that is only theoretical. And when we are emanating that love and that power, people will know it, they will see it, they will feel the authenticity of your being. And that is what will draw them to want to learn more. Because in this time, when those who are not attuned with that supreme power, they will be in anxiety, they will be in fear, in despair, some will be suicidal, some will be in total bewilderment, confusion, agony, aggressivity. But the serenity and calmness that you will be able to emanate into the world once you have taken refuge with the Buddha nature, the mind nature of God, once you have embodied that, it will clearly be recognized by all whom you meet, and there will be a sharing of that vibrational signature of union with God that will then be able to spread ever more widely until the world is again unified by the same field of supreme love. I hope that helps. Thank you.
We have another question from one of our members, actually similar to the response you gave to Rolando, but I think it's something that many people are asking. The question is from Alyssa, and she asks, how do you break the temptation to sink into ego when communicating with ones you are quarantined with, or people that are not interested in self-realization?
This is a time of solitude. It's a time in which you must find your own center. And when you abide in your own center, you will resonate in the world with great peace and serenity that others will want to share. And it's that vibrational field then that will produce harmony with others, who will, by coming into that field and becoming ever more congruent with the resonance of the most coherent energy, the most loving energy, the most powerful energy, others will be enheartened, they will be inspired, they will be strengthened, and there will be a new order of cooperation based on the most coherent signals that can be transmitted. And so that capacity for speaking with reason, with truth, with the middle way between the extremes, will be able to bring all into a kind of recognition that there is indeed one truth beyond the relativity of the perspectives of every ego. And each one will be able to find that it can relate to that higher level of realization and articulation of the truth, and be able then to come into harmony again with one another, because that is the only way that all will be served and all will be able to get through this time of testing successfully. We cannot do it if there is conflict or competition or projection onto the other. There has to be that recognition of our oneness. And in that, everyone will change, because everyone will want to be in the state of peace that the ego lacks. And so all will be very happy to rise from the ego level into soul consciousness, and from soul into pure spirit. It will be very easy to show the path if you yourself have arrived at the goal of the path. So that must be your focus. I hope that's of help to you.
you, Shunya. In response to Rolo's question and the idea of different paths, I had a question about prayer, especially because I've been atheist, agnostic, and I had many years been quite a devoted Christian, and prayer was a very important aspect. And last week, I think Mahalakshmi was asking about what can we offer to the other, and you mentioned offering blessings, and it seems like there's a difference between prayer and blessings, or at least I had this conflict with the idea of praying, because it feels like at an ego level, how do you know what's best for the other? So is that the difference between offering blessings? With blessings, are you not choosing something that you're actually wanting to change, but you're just offering goodness? Or I think my question is about the difference between offering prayer and offering blessings.
Mm-hmm. Well, first of all, let's understand prayer as having many levels. Within Christianity, there's petitionary prayer, where you're begging God to give you something, and there is, at the highest level, contemplative prayer, when you're not asking anything, but you are allowing your heart to have so much love for God that you are absorbed and unified with God via that love. Okay? So that level of prayer is the only level, once the contemplation has flowered into union, from which blessings can really be offered. But the blessings are not for any particular thing or goal or achievement. It is the blessing that the other also attains that union with God, and then they will be guided from within. So the petitionary prayer is the initial stage. When you're in the ego, there must be sufficient humility that you realize you need help. You are not able to make it at the level of your own consciousness, because that consciousness doesn't have the resources. It has too much fear. It has too much ignorance. It has too much lack of understanding of the nature of what is unfolding and of the nature of God. So the prayer is the method by which the ego dismantles its sense of separation from God and increases its intelligence. Because that's what God is: infinite intelligence, infinite love, infinite power. And so the more that our prayer is sincere and is willing to go from the level of talking to God and begging for help to listening to God and receiving the help, the more that we will be filled with, first, the level of prana that will bring the body and the health of the body into optimal levels, and then the shakti that raises the kundalini so that we rise from one chakra level to another, and finally are able to realize the flowering of that supreme consciousness that is at the crown of our potentiality. And then it is from there that God will give blessings through the individual vehicle. But there will no longer be any sense of a separate being from that supreme source. Okay, so the prayer is to bring you from separation into union, and the blessings come from the state of union. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Shunya. We have a question from Shuit from Ethiopia. Offers many thanks for discovering you on YouTube, and asks about trauma, dealing with trauma. And she says, as I'm meditating, there's a stream of consciousness attached to the body, specifically in the areas where I have extreme pain. It appears as though my attention is usurped by this ever-increasing intense pain, and that whether or not I want to focus on it is like a loud voice I can't escape. I feel it is somatized, unconscious stuff resurfacing to be released. So what is the best way to aid the purification process, or better yet, not to be an obstacle to the purification process which is occurring within?
Well, you're very wise because you already know that the pain you're feeling is projected into the body. It is indeed somatized, but it is psychological pain. It is pain that comes from past karma and indeed trauma. But underneath the trauma, the causes that force traumatic circumstances to arise in one's life. If one is willing to feel the pain not as a physical sensation, but to realize it as actually centered in the mental body, and one offers one's mind, including the subconscious, it will come up. And when it comes up, it will come up with some probably very nasty emotional pain and suffering rather than physical. But if one is willing to surrender one's mind to God, then that negative energy that the alchemists called the negredo will be burned away and will be uplifted and taken from you, and you will be cleansed. And in place of the pain will come the bliss of God's presence. And that will then be communicated into the physical as well and can produce healing. But even if the organism is not able to morph to the level that it's fully able to reflect that because of how far the condition may have gone in terms of the organismic nature, although there are actually no limits on this, if you are willing to be in the unlimited love of God without any sense of belief in the body as being separate from God's consciousness. If you are able to do that, then you will not feel pain. No matter how the body is, what condition it is in, you will be in light and love and peace and bliss, and you will recognize that everything is perfect, and there will be no resistance to what is happening. And the resistance is often what causes the most of the suffering. And once there is full acceptance, there can be release. And that will release all the karma that led up to that kind of event, even from past lives. You won't need to do a past life regression, but all of that karma will come up and it can all be released, and you will find yourself freed of the karmic burdens that you've been carrying, and then the light and the power will flow through you, and all of these current problems will be in the past and will be recognized as simply the instrument that forced you to return to God and wholeness and empowerment, and you will be very glad of the traumas that brought you to take the direct path into your own salvation once again. And so this is something you will then be able to share with others and help many who are in apparently physical pain to be released as well. Blessings to you for that attainment that is your birthright. Priya Ji.
Thank you. I have a question about surrender, about what is required for being able, or what really happens when one is able to surrender, because it seems to me that many things need to be in place to be able to surrender, like an open heart, trust, understanding of what one is surrendering to. So is it a humbling of the ego that is finally able to surrender, or is it a form of grace, or can you shine some light on that?
That's a good question. Different kinds of egos and ego structures have a different relationship to surrender. You can't know who you're surrendering to, though, beforehand. And this is part of the problem for some egos that demand to know first. But how is a finite mind going to understand the infinite? It's not possible. And God is indescribable. So that surrender is a surrender of the feeling of the need to know, to control, to determine, to have some false sense of autonomy, as well as the ego's dependence on other humans that it has been attached to and who it has mimicked and become identified with in the course of time. And it has to let go of all those external traits by which it has identified itself. So surrender, in a way, means becoming a stranger to yourself. You have to not know who you are before you can discover who you really are. And it's the willingness to let go of what you know is a construct, a fabrication, a quilt of different crazy attributes of different people you put together into a personality, or a set of sub-personalities to deal with different situations. But you know that all of it is simply a mask and a charade. And so if you're truthful with yourself, you'll realize, well, I never knew who I was, but I was afraid to admit it because what if I'm no one, you see? And you are no one, because the ego is a lie, it's a deception. But once the mask has fallen away, in that emptiness, in that vastness of nothingness, you will, if you surrender to the power that prevails in that emptiness, you will receive the fullness of grace. And then you will know God firsthand, the only way God can be known. I remember the last guru of the Kashmir Shaivite tradition. His name was Swami Lakshmanju. And he was once asked about attaining God consciousness while alive. If one can fully surrender, can one actually embody the whole of God consciousness? And he said, if you actually attain the fullness of God consciousness, you will feel such indescribable bliss that you won't want to come back to the body. You'll die. But it's not true that the body will die. What really happens is the ego dies, and you live in that indescribable bliss while the body is able to channel the amount of energy that it's able to tolerate of that infinite source into the world and produce miraculous effects. But no ego will be there anymore to witness it or care about it, because the bliss that you'll be in is so much more beautiful than what is happening here, that the dream will not any longer be of concern, but only the realization of the dreamer that you have now realized you are.
Thank you, Shunya. We have a question from Helen, who asks, what we're going through makes me think of the 7 or 10 torments of the scripts. If so, is there more coming up? Can you say something about it? What is happening with people who are not aware of this new world that is coming? The persons who will not think or believe in this new order.
Well, this is a morphogenetic field, and so everything is changing. And so one can be a non-believer one day and a very sincere, authentic knower the next day. So nothing remains the same from moment to moment. So that's not really of concern. What is of necessity is to be the embodiment of the truth. And then that will simply be projected into the world and have a morphogenetic effect on the world. And because the world is your dream, as you get to ever higher levels of consciousness, that dream morphs and is a pure reflection of your level of consciousness. So you're only going to experience torment if you're in the hell realm of the ego. If you rise to soul consciousness, there's no longer any torment. Then you're in purgatory rather than the inferno. Purgation means cleansing. And once the soul has been purified completely of all its past karma, torments included, as well as triumphs and of blissful moments in the course of the soul's history of journey through time and space. Once you have purified that, you're out of purgatory and you'll be in the paradiso of the pure spirit. And from there, not only is there no torment, but the ecstasy of the one will then be shareable with all. And the time of torment can end forever. Okay.
Question from our friend Vika. She asks, how do you see the evolution of the Sat Yoga ashram?
That's in the hands of God. The more that our consciousness evolves, so that every member of the ashram is resonating at chakra 7 in God consciousness, in the glory of that supernal light, and who is fully empowered and fully capable of functioning as a healing angel and a warrior angel to eliminate forms of darkness. And the more we are attuned to all the powers of light in the cosmos, then the evolution of what happens in this local space will be also in attunement with the larger divine order that transcends this planet. So this ashram is not simply to function at the planetary level, but an intergalactic level, and to function according to the cosmic dharma. So these phases of evolution will unfold as we become worthy of and able to meet such beings at such levels of consciousness who are waiting to be able to assist in the restoration of the earth's beauty by being able to meet within a state of total divine love and fearlessness. And so the evolution of the ashram will depend upon the collective level of consciousness that we together attain by being willing to make the ego subside and be annihilated as an obstacle in our ascension. And once that happens, then very astonishing events will occur here. Okay, we're getting near the end. This might be the last question.
Okay, it's a question from Alexandra, who asks about atonement and says, is this necessary or useful for the burdens we carry at this time?
Of course. But atonement, again, means attunement to God and to the realization of the real meaning of the burdens that you carry and why you were burdened with the karmic, let's say, blowback or backlash or consequence of inaccurate action that was not in attunement with the will of God. And if you are willing to learn from every burden that you carry and recognize that it is a responsibility of growth to a level in which you can not only learn from your past experiences, but grow from them and then teach others how to learn and grow from their experiences of the illusion, of the separation from God and the ignorance of the ego, and to learn to overcome that and to enter into that state of unitive heart and mind. That will not only transform the burdens into very glorious siddhis or yogic powers, but will open a path in which all of that karma will be able to turn into blessings for others who will be able to be released of any burdens they have that resonate with the ones that you have released. And it will make the path easier for others because you will have blazed it first. So whatever you are doing to release yourself is also releasing everyone else who is stuck in the same kind of a vibrational frequency of self-defilement. And in the purification of your own soul, then you provide the means of purification to be spread out and absorbed by others much more easily and more rapidly than would otherwise be the case. And the blessings for that offering accrue to your future unfoldment to even higher levels. I hope this meeting has been of help to everyone, and that we fully take the opportunity that is being given to us by these events to enter into solitude, to enter into God consciousness, to release ourselves of the false limitations that we have put upon our belief about who we are, and to reclaim our divine heritage and birthright and be able to manifest with all of the potentiality that we are given, and not stick to the level of consciousness in which we believe we are mere humans. It's that illusion that now must be broken through. And each one who breaks through makes it easier for every other to break through, and for the light of God then to shine through and into this world again in a way that is so powerful that it washes out all the darkness, all the evil, all the suffering, and brings a new world into manifest form. Blessings for all to achieve that level of consciousness now in which there is silence, peace, light, love, joy, and ultimate empowerment that will enable you to endure and prevail over whatever seeming difficulties that you may face, and to recognize that the power of God can conquer all difficulties and has no limits on its ability to bring you to redemption and to be a manifest form of godly assistance to all beings. Thank you all for your courage, for the sincerity of your seeking, for your ability to understand and your willingness to change and to let go of the old identity and to discover who you are in the eternal frame of reference that is God's own ultimate being. Know that you are that. Tattvamasi. Blessings to all. Namaste. I think Saraswati has announcements. Please come up.
Namaste. Namaste. And a few announcements for our online viewers. First of all, a huge thank you for joining us today. I think it's been very special for us to be with you today. And a special thank you to our members who ongoingly support us and through their regular participation allow us to continue with these offerings. So thank you so much. As Shunyamurti said, we're going to be expanding our offerings, and we hope to provide as many inspiring, empowering teachings as we can
so that we can actually thrive at this time. And in our basic member section, which you can read about below, we're going to be posting at least one teaching a week, and possibly more often than that. And something very special is that we're going to be now offering our 2 highest tiers of our membership, which previously were open to those who had been at the ashram. Those are now going to be open to the public. And these are levels that allow you to have access to every teaching we receive at the ashram, including retreats and special classes like book groups that Shunyamurti mentioned, film studies, etc. And also at this level, Shunyamurti will be responding to our members' questions with posts and responses. So you can read about that below. And also, we're very excited that for the first time, we're going to be offering one of Shunyamurti's retreats, a 7-day retreat, fully live streamed online on April 4th. This retreat begins, and it's appropriately named Awakening in a Dying World. We hope you'll read about it and perhaps join us. You can read more information below. And finally, before we sign off, a special thank you to those of our online viewers and friends who have understood that in this time we've had to close our doors to visitors, and have made a donation to help us keep our internal operations going as we support this community here and also a community of local workers. So thank you so, so much. And if you feel called to give a monetary donation in any amount, please read about that below. We have a few options. And until we see you again, we wish you many blessings for inner peace and protection. Namaste. 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 I can't see you.